Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of No Names All Game. Today is March 6th. My name is Chris Henkin, joined as always by my co-host Pat Colicchio, and it is March. It's not football season, but we've got a lot going on in the Penn State world. We got the NFL Combine. We have a defensive line coach vacancy. We have winter workouts. We have new updated weights for some guys. That's what you talk about in the offseason. But in the rest of the Penn State world, it's a pretty wild weekend. The basketball team doing some crazy things. Penn State wrestling. We have your wrestling expert, Patty Pins. What did we call you? Pat Talking Matt. Remember that?
I like all this. Patty Pins.
Patty Pins is pretty good. Pat Talking Matt. Pat will give you all the updates. Big Ten tournament just happened. NCAAs are on deck. And then we have Penn State wrestling legend Bo Nickal makes his UFC debut in dominant fashion. So we will get to all of that shortly, but it's good to be back. It's been about a month since we recorded. Talked about how we want to do a little bit more this off season. We're trying to stay on top of it. We are sticking to that commitment. Pat, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I was taken aback by the John Scott news. I don't know if I'm just out of the loop or if that came out of nowhere, but I was definitely surprised this kind of late in the game for that to happen. But I had a lot of fun watching Big Tens, watching Bo Nickal. I didn't get to watch the basketball game because I was traveling, but keeping up with that was thrilling. So yeah, I'm having a pretty good start to the week.
And we were just talking before we started. You weren't just traveling; you went to see the boss.
I did. I traveled to Denver to see Bruce Springsteen, a man who I saw twice in State College.
Wow.
And yes. And when I got on the pre-sale for the tickets, they tell you to pick 3 different venues. And even though it's nowhere near me, one of the ones I picked was the Bryce Jordan Center.
Was it just the closest to you or not closest to you?
I picked the 2 closest. No, back when I got the tickets, months ago. I signed up for the pre-sale.
Sorry to the listeners. I need to clarify this. Bryce Jordan Center, you picked this year in the year 2023, or this is when you were in school?
In 2023. Because when you sign up for the pre-sale, they're like, pick 3 venues that you'd want to go to. I was like, I'll go Denver. I forget the other one I picked, but it was somewhere west-ish. And I was like, Bryce Jordan Center.
If you can make a Penn State trip out of it, why not? That's pretty cool. I am going to see him at MetLife in Jersey this summer with my family. Very, very excited for that. Man, I haven't seen a concert at the Bryce Jordan Center probably since I was a student, rightfully so. But there were some good ones back in the day. I feel like they always get some good shows. But it's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Penn State sports. Let's start with the defensive line vacancy. We'll get to the combine and winter workouts in a minute, but I think this is probably the hottest topic right now. I'm with you. I did not see this one coming. Agreed. We're kind of underway in this calendar year. But John Scott Jr. heading to the NFL. I believe it was the Lions, I want to say. Is that right?
Yes.
Heading to the Lions. Good for him. I'm excited. Anytime you see guys kind of rising in the ranks, taking other opportunities, good for them. I don't know if I'd say good for the program. I was about to say good for the program, shows our guys are, moving on. But, the NFL is always one of those things that I think is a calling for a lot of guys. And when opportunities come up, you can't knock them for taking it. So good luck to him. I think, we saw some good things in the couple of years that he was here, but now there's a big vacancy. We've talked many times about how D-line has been kind of a real position of value for us over the years. We've seen a ton of really good D linemen. We were spoiled with Coach Chaos for a while as a really good defensive line coach. I mean, you go back to the years of Larry Johnson. There's been a lot of good D-line stuff in Penn State. But now Franklin has a hire to make, and we just brought in a new wide receivers coach. Last year, we saw Manny Diaz come in. So there's always going to be that churn. But it always brings a little bit of uncertainty, right? You want the home run hire. You want the best guy. You want that consistency. You don't want anything to slip. Where's your thoughts right now on what should happen or what you think will happen or anything around that?
Yeah, I mean, you got to imagine this hire has to be made soon. Probably want this done before spring practices. And, this is I don't know that there's ever an unimportant time for recruiting, but, this is a time where you're building relationships with these guys, trying to get them to make their official visits. That's an
Yeah.
important time, man. You got, for the most part, you get no chance to recruit if they don't take an official visit.
Mhm.
So it's going to be important to get whoever the guy is, get him in the room soon, and he's got to hit the ground running, especially with the need that this team has at defensive tackle right now.
Yeah, yeah, very true. So I think there's a couple of names being thrown around. I've been pretty vocal on Twitter. I would like it to be Deion Barnes. I'll make my pitch for him in a minute here. I think he's the right guy. I think it's the right time. I think there's a lot of good things around that story that make it a good hire, a fun hire, but also I think the right hire. But there are some other names. So earlier this week or last week, it was reported that Justin Hines or Hins, Hinds, the defensive line coach from the Chicago Bears in the NFL, was the target. It seemed to be like it was moving in that direction, but just recently it was reported that he's going to stay put in the NFL with the Bears. So that's out.
And also,
Um,
why wouldn't he? He's
yeah,
going to make a
I mean,
lateral move to college.
I mean, maybe some guys just, maybe the NFL's not right for him. Maybe he wants the college. I don't know. Listen, it worked for Saban, right? He went to the NFL, came right back.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
that's
I
how it
did.
went.
It's exactly how it went. No, I'm not making that comparison. Genuinely, that was a joke. But there are a couple guys that I think that are big names. The biggest one that I've seen is Elijah Robinson from Texas A&M. If you remember, last year he was a guy that everybody wanted as the defensive coordinator before we brought in Manny Diaz. What are your thoughts on Elijah Robinson?
Yeah, I remember hearing this name before Manny. Again, like I think it would be pretty much a home run hire. The guy obviously recruits like a monster, and having ties to the South, where a lot of those big defensive tackles come from, could be big. But again, I just don't see him taking a lateral move, the same position at a different
Yeah,
school.
yeah, that's where I'm at with it. Would I be happy if he was hired? Of course. He's had really good success. He has Penn State ties. But my thing is like, if you were ready to make him the defensive coordinator, and you meaning the fan base, obviously, we don't know what's going on in the building, but if the fan base was ready to make him the defensive coordinator, thought he deserved that and could be that, why would he take the defensive line job? Right. Like, and listen, that happens, right? Manny came and took a defense coordinator job after being a head coach. Like guys do take, lateral moves and steps down, but I just don't think it's going to be enough appeal to him. And also what I've read is that they pay him a shit ton of money. It would take like seven figures. It would take $1 million or more a year to bring him in. Penn State doesn't really disclose what we pay our assistants, but I don't think we're quite there.
Yeah, we're definitely
Um,
not paying him that much.
yeah, so it would be fun. It would be exciting. I don't think it's going to happen. Another name thrown around just kind of for funsies, I think, is Sean Spencer. Bring Coach Chaos home. He's at Florida. He's the defensive line slash co-defensive coordinator down there. Also, what I've read, gets paid a lot of money. SEC hits different. Thoughts on Sean Spencer coming home?
I mean, that would be awesome. But again, I just don't see it. Like,
Yeah,
he's at a big time program. He's getting paid a lot of money, and he just got there.
yeah,
He
yeah.
has
And this
not
is
been there for
his
a long
second
time.
year, third year, maybe. He was with the
Yeah.
Giants. He left Penn State. He went to the Giants, New York Giants in the NFL, and then went to Florida. I think he's coming into his third year. I think he's had two there. I could be wrong. Um, but I agree. I don't know. Like, it would be fun. I love Coach Chaos. He's one of my favorite coaches we've ever had. I don't see like why he would do it.
Yeah, it just probably wouldn't happen.
Yeah. And then there's a bunch of other names. Everyone puts out their, big lists of names to watch, targets. I saw the defensive line coach from Pitt, blanking on his name, but that was an interesting candidate. He's had some success with NFL
Yes, he
guys, getting
has.
guys to the NFL. In a program like Pitt, where you're not getting the top recruits, that would be exciting to me.
Yeah,
I don't know what it would take to pull him from Pitt, but that would be fun.
yeah. Plus
And
a
then
little
there's
salt in the wound right there.
yeah, of course, right? Like, anytime you get a chance, I don't love like shitting on Pitt or the shit on Pitt because like I don't like to even give them that like moral victory of like, oh, I'm in your head and you're thinking about me. Nope, I'm not thinking about you at all.
Also, like by the
Um,
time we were there, it was not. It hasn't been like a real rivalry in a long time.
yeah,
We rarely play each other.
Yeah, we had those couple of years. What was it, 20, I don't know, 13, 14,
Yeah.
where we played him, but it was like, whatever. Either way, my point being, he's a name on the list. And then you get these laundry lists of like anyone who's ever had a tie to James Franklin, anyone who's ever had a tie to Penn State. They're all on the list. Um, but my vote is Deion Barnes. I think he is the right guy for this job at this time, for a litany of reasons. Like, he's young, he's a rising star. The players speak so highly of him. PJ Mustipher at the combine was asked about it. He said, "I want James Franklin to hire him." That's about as good of an endorsement as you can get. It's not, "Oh, I think he'd do a great job," or, "Yeah, I could see him doing that." It's, "I want James Franklin to hire him." He talked about how much he helped him in the defensive line. Terry Smith has talked very highly on him. There's an interview with Terry that's been quoted in a lot of articles where he says, like, we talked last episode about how well Deion helped recruiting with the D line and working with the guys and how much they, were able to kind of relate to him being a younger guy. And he actually says in that interview, like, he's going to get a defensive line coach somewhere. I hope he gets a great job somewhere. And then he goes on to say, like, hope we can keep up Penn State, but like, he will get a job. So my thing is this: he was a grad assistant for, I think it was 3 years because he got the extra COVID year or whatever. We were able to keep him on this year as an analyst. If you don't promote him, he's probably going to leave next year for some defensive line job. Maybe it's at a lower school. It'll be probably Power Five. Maybe it's a lower school, but he is, in my opinion, that highly regarded that he'll get a job somewhere else. That's not the reason you promote him. You don't promote a guy just to be like, "Oh, I don't want to lose him." But if you think he's the right guy, or if you think he can be a good defensive line coach or a great defensive line coach, then I think this is the right time to do it. And of course, we don't know that, right? Only Franklin and Manny Diaz and the defensive staff know that. But everything we've heard about him tells us that he has a real bond with the players on the team, that he's well respected, that people have seen improvement working with him. I just think you get a young superstar now that you can lock down that position for the next, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. I mean, that's consistency to recruiting, to development, to sending guys to the NFL. Like, it just makes so much sense to me. What do you think?
Yeah, when the name first got floated around, I was kind of like, yeah, it's not going to happen just because he's so young. But then, the more I thought about it, and honestly, the more I heard the players talking about it, they want him hired. You're right. And this is a guy who he's got moves, like he's got stuff to teach. And a lot of players on that defensive line credit him with a lot of their development. So
Yeah,
I think it's pretty clear that he can coach. Whether he can teach, whether, he can coach at that in that position remains to be seen.
of
I'd be
course.
happy to see it. And, he's a guy who's got deep ties to Philly. That's big in recruiting. That's an area Penn State needs to be strong in. And he's apparently been the guy who's taken the lead on the defensive line recruiting since John Scott has left. So keep
Yeah,
that momentum going with some consistency there. I think would also show those players that like Deion's probably here for the long haul. Like if you
right.
sign, Deion just got hired. He's young. He is not going to be looking for a defensive coordinator, not going to be like sought after for a defensive coordinator job anytime too soon, most likely. So if you're signing with Penn State, you're likely getting him for your entire playing career at Penn State.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. I mean, that's a huge selling point because that's like with some of these other guys with, Elijah Robinson or Sean Spencer. Like, obviously, they're looking at the next step in their career. Like, we just brought Manny Diaz in. Maybe he's looking to be a head coach again, and maybe he leaves in a couple of years. So, like, maybe someone says like, "Oh, I can come in, be the D line coach, and then take over when Manny leaves." Maybe, but I think a lot of those guys probably don't want to come into a situation that's like established like we are. Whereas Dion just makes a ton of sense from so many different angles. Um, like I said, we don't know, right? We don't know what he's actually viewed on in the room and in the building. Like, yes, they've all said really great things. But I just think it makes a lot of sense. I think it would do wonders for recruiting. I mean, he was the one tweeting out the winter workouts the other day, which, like, obviously I'm not going to read too far into. Like, somebody had to do it. But I just think it makes a lot of sense. So, Dion, I'm
Yeah.
rooting for you, brother.
He seems to be the interim D line coach right now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I would imagine we get an answer probably sometime this week, maybe next. Franklin I think typically has a pretty good turnaround on this, right? We've always said he has that list that he claims of like all the coaches across the country that he's keeping his eye on. So I'm sure he knows the few targets that he wants to go after. And I do like for the other side of the argument, I do get the desire to have like a guy, a veteran guy, a guy who's run a D line room, a guy who has experience handling, you know, admin isn't the right word, but like the non football things, right? There comes more with being a coach than just can you coach the position, right? It's you're a leader of the room, you're an owner of that part of the defense. So I get it, taking that step from grad assistant to D line coach. I don't know how big that is. I don't know like what that like linear progression looks like. Like, we don't really have like assistant position coaches in college football. It doesn't really work that way. So it's like eventually you got to get a chance. Someone has to give you a chance. But I think maybe the hesitation from some fans is like at a program like Penn State, you can attract a top talent who's in the position already. So why not grab someone? My counter would just be you've got a superstar in the building potentially, and you have a chance to kind of get him from the ground up. So we'll see. But that is the update on the D line coach. Up next, you want to go NFL Combine or winter workouts? What are you feeling?
Let's go winter workouts because I feel like that's going to be shorter. I
Yeah,
feel like
fair.
combine's the juicier topic.
Absolutely. So winter workouts, not a lot to discuss. Probably the biggest thing of these winter workouts was a particular Drew Aller boot gate, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Another Penn State podcast tweeted out that he was seen in a boot. The Penn State Twitter world went crazy. Whether or not he was in a boot, whether or not he's slightly banged up, I personally don't care. I just think it was hilarious how crazy we all went from a single tweet. But we've seen him in videos, we've seen him in pictures in the weight room, we've seen videos of him throwing now. He appears to be fine. But one thing I noticed and one thing I thought was kind of interesting in these like winter, workout warrior of the day, I don't think he won any of them. I think Bo won most of them and
I think he might have
Smollett
won
won
one.
one. He might have won one. But it was Bo. Bo won several, and then even Jackson Smollett won one. Um, and I don't put stock into that, right? Like I think the coaches probably use that as a motivation tool, right? So, give some guys some praise that maybe don't see it all the time. You see it in other position groups too, like in the tight end room. I don't think I saw Theo Johnson. In some of the other rooms, I don't think I saw some of the more senior guys. So like, I think that's fine. But like, I'm curious, like, what do you think of that of winter workouts when you see like this person's the workout warrior of the day, and like maybe it's not the people you thought. Like, do you care about that at all?
No, I mean it's one of those things. It's cool to see it for the guys who win, but this is not how they're choosing
Right.
who's getting positions. And like sometimes the guy who's hungry is going to have the hardest workout.
Yeah, exactly. And you do see like Nick Singleton was on there several times. Like you do see some of the big name guys. Like it's not all young and up and comers. But I thought that was pretty funny that like people started making that a thing. Well, we haven't seen Drew win a workout warrior, so it's like, dude, just stop.
It
Please
doesn't
stop.
matter.
um, that being said, really the only thing to take away from winter workouts is, like I said, the updated um, weight changes, which is kind of hilarious to me that we're like sitting here looking at college kids and being like, wow, he gained some weight. Sick. It's just like a weird concept to me. But I did want to go through some of them because they are important. And this is a tweet from PSU Dylan. Shout out PSU Dylan. Great account. Has a really big Instagram account, like 40,000 followers or something. But interacts with us on Twitter a good bit. Really like what they do. Posted up like some of the most notable changes. So I'm going to run through a couple of them. You give me your thoughts. First, let's start with some defensive changes. Probably maybe the most notable. Linebacker Abdul Carter from 233 to 249.
Yeah,
What
that's
do you think?
listen, you got to remember that kid was a true freshman last year. This is not a redshirt freshman who had an entire year in a college strength and conditioning and diet program. This is
Yeah.
his first off season in that program.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he's gonna put on some weight. He's big, dude. And
Dude,
I don't know, he's got a big frame. He doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who can't handle that kind of weight increase.
right.
You see him moving the same way with that kind of weight. He's a scary man out there.
That's what I was just going to say. If you were frightened by a 233-pound Abdul Carter running at you full steam ahead, imagine a 249-pound freight train coming into the backfield. Love that. Also on the defensive side, Chop Robinson. This one was kind of surprising to me. 239 up to 253. Pretty big increase for a D end.
Yeah, but that is again, that's good size for D end. That one is a little more surprising because he's been in a college program before.
Yeah,
I guess this might be his first like full off season with Penn State, depending on when he got in. So that can make a
true.
big difference.
Yeah, I mean, 14 pounds. Like, I think again, I obviously I think our training staff and our weight strength and conditioning team is one of the best in the country. Obviously, they know what they're doing. But I think that's when I'm going to be interested to see, like, does he have any sort of differences in his styles, right? Like, does his move set change? Does he have more power versus speed rushes? Things like that. And the last one on the defensive side, or two, some of the early enrollees, Tony Rojas, linebacker, who was my pick for instant impact. The biggest thing that you said was
Not big
kind of
enough.
small, 195 to 214. Ooh,
That is quick.
that's quick. That's a lot. It's 19 pounds, 20 pounds in a couple of months. And Elliot Washington, 190 to 201. So 11 pounds, the defensive back. So love to see some of the young guys come in and immerse themselves in this right away. And another thing too, like obviously this isn't going to be their final playing weight, right? Like some of that will probably trim down over the spring and summer as they get a little bit more in playing shape. But like, love to see that. On the offensive side, a lot of notable ones. Both running backs put on weight. Singleton 219 to 228. Katron Allen 201 to 218.
That man's back.
Fat man's back. And I was reading, replies to this tweet, and someone said it best, like, didn't he come in around 220 and drop to 200? Like, why put it back? Again, I trust our staff. I imagine that's them, taking off some of the fat and building up good muscle, right? Like, so, if he came in, if he was used to running at 220 and we slimmed him down and he had an incredible season as is, now we build some of that muscle back up and he's even more of a bruiser, sign me up.
Yeah, and yeah, he'll lose a little bit more weight before the season starts, like you said.
Of course. And then Nick Singleton, I love to see that too. Only 9 pounds, 219 to 228, but like, we know he's got the wheels, we know he's got the speed, but I mean, you remember what Saquon did? He built over his years, right? Those quads didn't come out of nowhere, right? He put on weight and became a more physical runner over the years. Love to see that. Couple of offensive linemen, Olu 308 to 323, Caden Wallace 301 to 328, Javen Williams, another early enrollee, our 5-star in this class, 290 to 313. JB Nelson, it says 300 to 330. That's a lot. 30 pounds seems like a lot. And then the last one is wide receiver Keandre Lambert Smith, 176 to 184. He's a smaller guy. It's probably difficult for him to add a bunch, but I think, when you're a smaller wide receiver in college, you have to work to put on more to be ready for the NFL. We've talked about this being kind of a, I don't know, breakout's the right word, but like defining season for him. I would love to see him being a little bit more physical. So, yeah, that's Weight Watchers with No Name Saul Kim. Any other thoughts? Winter workouts as we head into spring ball? Anything catching your eye?
No, I mean this is this is the point in the season where everyone just you overanalyze everything, like you said. We're sitting here looking at how much college kids weigh right now, and it's not even going to be what they weigh in September.
It's kind of ridiculous, but you know what? It gets us through. Yeah. All right, let's finish the football talk. Let's finish the football talk with the NFL Combine. I don't know if we've talked about this before. Are you a Combine guy? Do you like watching it? Do you think it's annoying? Do you hate it? Where do you stand?
No, it's just too repetitive for me. And I used to watch it all the time, and then somewhere along the line of like a couple of years, I was just like, my eyes cannot tell the difference between a guy who runs a 4.5 and a guy who runs a 5 flat. It's just me watching guys running and looking at a clock.
Yeah, I think this year was that year for me. Um, I've been a combine guy for a while. I love the NFL draft. It's like one of my favorite things in the world. Bill Burr has an amazing bit on it. If you guys are into comedy, have you ever heard that one? He's talking about how
Probably.
people, yeah, he's talking about how ridiculous it is that people sit there and watch the NFL draft. He goes, "You don't know these guys. You don't know any of them." He's like, "It'd be like you showing up to a high school graduation and watching people go across the stage, but you don't know any of them, and you're just like, yeah, fucking hilarious." I probably just butchered a Bill Burr joke, but you get the point. So I've always liked the combine because I'm like, oh, I can get to see everyone. I can get to see guys maybe I wasn't as familiar with, and I can get to kind of learn about them before the draft. Um, and maybe not having one, what was it, 2 years ago with the pandemic, kind of like put that break in my brain because like the last year or two, I've just been like, I'm not that interested anymore. Like you're right, it's just dudes running. Like some of the drills are fun, some of the some of the highlights are cool, but I can see that on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like
And I can just look up
ESPN's going
the
to post the
results on
best
the
one.
numbers.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Um, but this year we did have, I think, 7 guys total representing. Really good showing from Penn State. But I feel like for the first year in a while, no real major takeaways for me. Um, all of our guys were good. There weren't any amazing, crazy, great performances. Um, Also, no like terrible performances that I think hurt anyone. But I think we've gotten like accustomed to and maybe a little bit spoiled over the last however many years of like some really insane athletes coming out of Penn State that we've been like excited, like, oh, how fast is this guy going to run, or how high is he going to jump, or how many reps is he going to do? And like, I didn't really feel that this year,
Yeah,
which is
this was
not
not the
again not
freak
a
athletes class for Penn State.
yeah, not a knock on any of these guys, but it didn't have that same like glow to it. So I have a couple of notes. I'll run through them here, maybe, and then you can give some of your thoughts. Joey Porter Jr., obviously, our crown jewel of this class, expected to be a first rounder, expected to be a high first rounder. He ran well. He talked about how he wanted to run. He wanted to show people that he is fast. Listed on the NFL website, the combine results is a 4.46, which is pretty good. I think we've gotten desensitized a lot over the last couple of years of all these guys running 4.2s and 4.3s. Like 4.46 still pretty damn fast. When he ran it on the broadcast, it was listed as like a 4.5 something, and I was like, that's a little disappointing. You shave off a tenth of a second, and I'm like, wow, great. Also ridiculous concept. But I think the big thing people wanted to see about him, long arms, 34 inches. I don't measure people's arms that often, but apparently it is the
Longer than mine.
fifth longest by a corner since 2003. People liked that. And again, I don't think this performance changed his stock one way or the other. I think there's 3 corners at the top of this draft that everyone's talking about. It's Devin Witherspoon from Illinois, Christian Gonzalez from Oregon, and Joey Porter Jr. I think all 3 of them will go within the top 15 to 18 picks, and it just depends on teams who kind of fall in love with them, who fit their scheme, who are looking for certain traits on where they go. It wouldn't shock me if he's the first one off the board in the top 10. Wouldn't shock me if he's the third off the board, around 15. And then that changed, a month ago. I thought he was surefire the first one off. The more I read about these guys, the more I see. He's still going to be a first rounder.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this result really could have helped him. If there was one knock on Joey, other than maybe being a little grabby, it's that he wasn't considered a fast cornerback.
True.
I thought anywhere in the low 4.5s was a win for him.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, that was the worry. That was that he was going to be in the mid to high 4.5s. So to
Yeah.
be in the 4.4s is actually a pretty big deal. And I'm not saying it's an automatic surefire. This moves him up on the boards. This gets him to the first corner off the list. But most importantly, it doesn't solidify him as the third. It doesn't drop his stock at all. And I think this does increase the chances of him being a top 10 pick.
Yeah, agreed. And I think one thing I've noticed this year that I haven't seen in a lot of last years is they're starting to really hone in on the 10-yard split of the 40. It's like your first 10 yards. And he was at 1.5 seconds. The fastest corner was 1.47. but he's in that top tier of like breakaways or initial burst rather.
Mhm.
So if you're looking at a guy and he is noted as like a press man cover who's going to be up and physical with a guy, if you're looking for someone who can, be that physical and then burn with someone right away, I think he's going to do really well. So shout out Joe. He was really cool. His dad was there in the stands. They were interviewing him like while he was on the field. Very cool moment. Couple other things. I thought Brenton Strange did really well. We've talked about him as a guy we could see him going like third, fourth round. Most projections don't have him till the fifth or sixth. But I thought he tested well. I ran a 4.740, which isn't insane. But again, that 10-yard split, 1.57, which is tied for first amongst all tight ends. So if that's what they're looking for, great. 23 reps on the bench press, tied for first amongst all tight ends. Love to see it. I think he had a pretty good vertical. Hang on, I'll pull it up now. 36 inches on the vertical, 10.4 on the broad
It's higher
jump.
than mine.
Yeah, much higher than mine. Some good numbers in the 3-cone and the 20-yard shuttle, the agility. I just think I think he did well. And like for teams that maybe weren't aware of him or didn't know about him, again, I don't think this burst his stock like through the roof, but I think he did pretty damn good.
Yeah. 4.7, good, not great. But the rest of that, yeah, you're very happy. The 10-yard split's tremendous. 23 reps in the bench press, very good for
Yeah.
sure. And, NFL teams, they want a tight end that can be out there for the passing game and the running game. Like you've seen that with Mike Gesicki, who's, a great, great receiver, but he gets a limited amount of snaps and action because he's not a reliable blocker in the run game.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. I posted a tweet right before we're recording this. So if you're listening to this, look at Monday night's tweets. There's a clip of Darnell Washington, the tight end from Georgia, pushing the sled. And he is a freak. Darnell Washington, he's like 6'7", 270 or something. He has 11-inch hands, which is massive. And he's pushing the sled and just making it look pretty easy to begin with. But you don't realize like kind of how cool it is. And then the one clip that's going viral, it's him. And then they show two other guys with like really bad reps, like can barely move the sled. And Darnell's just kind of like waddling it. And you're like, wow, that's impressive. And it got me thinking, I was like, oh, like I wonder how Brenton did. So I went to the Penn State football Twitter account. They posted. I was like, well, he did almost the same. Like didn't make it look as effortless. Didn't, not as powerful as, not as huge as Darnell Washington, but looked pretty damn good. And then I started looking up the stats. Brenton's are much better. Now, granted, Darnell Washington is sharing a tight end room with Brock Bowers, who will be a first rounder next year. I think he battled some injuries his first year. But like Darnell Washington has like 3 touchdowns in his career over 3 years. Brenton has 10. I'm not saying Brenton should be a first rounder, but you got Darnell Washington, who's like being talked at as a lead first rounder, but Brenton's like a 5th round guy. I don't get it. So it'll be interesting to see if he kind of climbs up a little bit because of a pretty good performance. Obviously, as you interview with teams, things happen. I'm excited to see where Brenton lands.
Yeah, I think you could see him in those like 3rd to 4th rounds.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he will be, but he could.
Yeah. And then the rest of the guys, like I said, not a lot of takeaways. Jair Brown didn't test amazing, but his on the field like ball drills looked really good. And I think that's what a lot of people like about him. You look at the stats. I think they said he's like the only player in the country maybe to have like 4 sacks and 4 interceptions this year or something like that. I don't think this hurt him. He ran a little slow. He didn't put up any crazy numbers, but again, I think he's a 2nd round guy. I would be shocked if he goes later than that, to be honest, but we'll see. And then Juice, sort of the same. Juice Scruggs performed pretty well. Not earth shattering numbers. And again, for offensive linemen, like you're not going to see any like crazy 40s or agility or anything like that. But his on field like drill, the old lineman drill, he looked really good. In a class that's not like super deep with centers, there's a couple at the top. I think kid from, I want to say Minnesota maybe or Wisconsin. I don't know. There's like 2 or 3 up the top that people are kind of looking at. And then after that, there's not a ton of names. So I think he could work his way into like mid rounds as well. I don't know. That's really all I got from the combine. Anything else that you have thoughts on or want to talk about?
Yeah, Jair's 40 time was for sure a little disappointing. I think it was like the 4.6s, right?
Yeah, he's 4.65.
Yeah, and for a safety, you definitely want faster than that. You're gonna. I'll put it this way: if he runs a good time at pro day, it should be enough for that to not really hurt him.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. And people are starting to talk too about how the 40 times are kind of suspect. There's a bunch of videos going around of like the clock like starting before the guy takes off or stopping after they get through the line. Like I'm sure the NFL won't actually address it because it would just be a fucking clusterfuck of
Well, I
trying
mean,
to like
but they do
validate.
also change guys' times because of stuff like that. So
Sure, but there,
that is
there's
one
a
of those like
lot of
Twitter
them.
internet things where you see that
Yeah,
and then they don't post the fact that like, yeah, his time was adjusted afterwards.
right, exactly, exactly. So we'll see. But one thing I think is cool on the NFL website, they give them all like a grade, and there's a range from like will be a backup, will be a starter, will be an instant impact, all that kind of stuff. Um, who knows what they actually are? And then for some of the higher guys, they give like an NFL comparison. So just to run through these real quick, and then we'll wrap this up. Joey Porter Jr. NFL comparison, Amani O'Rourke. But that was kind of interesting. His like prospect grade, the numbers don't matter, but the text is will become a good starter within 2 years. I like that. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Uh, Mitchell Tinsley, a little bit lower. They have candidate for bottom of roster or practice squad. Again, a guy didn't really test all that well. We'll see. Jair Brown will eventually be a plus starter. So they believe, despite testing, that he'll be a better than average starter. Love to see that. Brenton Strange will eventually be average starter. Starter is pretty good. And again,
Yeah.
this is just the NFL's, predictions. Don't take this for anything. Drew Scruggs, traits or talents to be above average backup. I think he's a little higher, but that's fine. And PJ
Especially at
Mustafaur,
center.
PJ Mustafaur candidate for bottom of roster or practice squad. Again, I think higher. But just interesting to see kind of like despite any of the numbers, they still make like their judgment, and some are spot on, some are very different. So we'll see. But like I said, kind of a lackluster combine overall. We didn't have any, guys that we were really looking forward to running a 4.340 or anything like that. But I think all of our guys performed well. Even Parker Washington, who is still rehabbing from injury, went out and did the bench press. Couldn't do any like running drills, but did the bench press just to show teams that he was there and he was ready. So I'm excited. Can't wait for the draft. We'll see where all these guys land.
Mm-hmm.
Whew, a lot of off-season football that's not that exciting that I'm trying to make exciting. Hope you guys
Any,
are enjoying it.
any football's exciting.
Anyway, speaking of exciting
Things that were exciting.
things that were exciting, sorry, football, it's not your season. Basketball and wrestling. A whole lot of shit went down this weekend. Um, you want to do basketball quick, and then I'll let you finish with wrestling because I think you probably have a good amount to talk about on that.
Yeah, I'll keep it as brief as possible, but there's 10
Brief.
guys. You got to.
Yeah,
There's going to be
10 guys doing
details.
doing well. We'll give
Yeah.
the details. So let's give the basketball overview here. I've said this many times. I'm not a huge basketball fan at any level, but when my teams are doing well, it's fun to be a part. Call me bandwagon, call me fair weather. I don't care. I'm enjoying it. Penn State's good. The Knicks are good. Shout out the Knicks. Um, Crazy week for Penn State basketball. For the last month or so, been kind of on the bubble for the NCAA tournament. Have not been in the tournament since 2011. Been a long time. Needed to do some special things in these last couple of weeks to get in, and for the most part, they did. Since February 14th, Penn State is 5-1. The only loss being a brutal loss against Rutgers, which probably should have won that game. Should have been 6
Oh,
and 0.
probably.
Definitely should have won that game.
They're up by like 22.
Definitely should have won. Yeah, they were up like 20 in the second half. Should have won that game. Embarrassing, whatever. If we win that game, we're sitting at 6-0. We're probably comfortably in the tournament at this point, not sweating anything. But that wouldn't be exciting. As Penn State said, we will make it interesting for you. The last two games, two ridiculous buzzer beaters from Cameron Winter. Winter's coming. Northwestern, the three in the corner as time expires, just unreal. And then Maryland yesterday, I think it was Seth Lundy puts up a three at the end. He gets the rebound, puts it in, game winner. I was losing my shit yesterday. Again, as a casual, I'll take that. I'm a casual. I was screaming at my TV. It was so fun to watch. What do you think about this last week or so?
Yeah, Cameron Winter's a guy who's come on as an exciting player. Um, after that Rutgers game, I had written this team off as this is not a tournament team. That was they had I forget I can't remember exactly what game, but this was the second time they had lost badly in like as many weeks. And I was like, yeah, they're not making it. Tournament hopes are over. And then they rip off, four or five quality wins. A Northwestern team that's very good at home, a ranked Maryland team. This is a team that now has like 5 quad 1 wins, which is really important for tournament rankings. And I think they're 5-6 in quad 1 games, which for a bubble team is very good.
Okay.
You're seeing that like I think most they're in like the last four in most
Yep.
bracket predictions, which is a good-ish place to be. But depending, that can also be scary. It only takes one team that isn't supposed to win their conference tournament does that, and now Penn State's out, or one decision doesn't go their way, and they're out. But I think right now, as long as they win a game in the Big Ten tournament, they are most likely in. I don't think they'd have to like make the semifinals, I think, to be a definitely in team. But as long as they win a game in the Big Ten tournament, they should be in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, that was my thinking from just like reading and following along. I'm not an expert in this, but about an hour before we started this, Joe Lenardi just dropped his newest bracketology, has us in the last four buys. Not last four in, last four buys.
Huge.
Huge. So we are the fourth one there. But my understanding is last four in still has to play like that play-in game to get in. Last four buys, you are in, not having to sweat that game. Is that right?
Um,
I think.
I don't know if they necessarily have. No, I don't think the playing games are usually like two teams playing for a 16. I think
Yeah.
sometimes it all depends on how it falls, because if a team that went, so with some of these smaller conferences, if a team that actually had like a terrible regular season wins their conference tournament, they're an automatic bid to the NCAA tournament now.
Right.
And so they'll play like they'll play like another 16 seed.
Yeah.
But
Gotcha.
sometimes it is like a play-in for like a 12 seed or something like that. It all depends.
Yeah. So from what I've seen on Twitter in the last couple hours, being in the last four buys versus last four in is huge. So that's amazing. But like you said, a win in the Big Ten tournament would be huge. And we draw Illinois, who we have beat twice this
Yeah,
season.
and beat
Once at home.
badly at their
Yes.
house.
Yes. One of my favorite clips to come out of any interview is Brad Underwood, their coach. The reporter is like asking him a question about someone's leadership, and this is after we beat them at home, and he just goes, just like not about the leadership. He was just like deflated from losing the game. It's fucking hilarious. So I would love to beat them one more time. Not going to look ahead, but if we beat them, I think we'd get a rematch with Northwestern, which would be crazy exciting after the way the last game happened. But yes, I agree. I think a win against Illinois cements it. But I think right now we are in a much better position than most people thought we would be a week or two ago. And like I said, the most recent tournament appearance, I was looking it up, 2011, lost to Temple in the round of 64. That
Remember
game
that
was
game?
66 to 64. Lost by 2 points in against Temple. Taylor Battle, 23 points. Tim Frazier, 15 points. Some Penn State basketball legend. I would love to see this team get a chance. This game against Maryland was senior day. You saw Miles Dredd super emotional after the game, talking about how much the team means to him. Then you talk about some of the new guys, like Jalen Pickett came in and just fucking dominated. He's up now. He's a top 5 finalist for point guard of the year. And like Micah Shrewsbury talking about him and talking about he talked about like all the seniors after the game. It was pretty cool, and just like said like things about each one of them. Like, again, as a guy who's not a huge basketball fan, like these guys are fun to watch, and this team like brings you in. It's that gif of just when I thought I was out, you bring me back in. So I hope we get a chance to see them make it to the dance, and anything can happen. It's March.
Yeah, I'm excited to hopefully see in this team in the NCAA tournament.
Absolutely. So shout out basketball team. Congrats on a crazy week. Hopefully more good things coming. Next up, wrestling. Big
Wrestling.
Ten tournament just happened yesterday. Saw a lot of champions. Saw some crazy cool things. Lay it down for us.
Yeah. So the premier program at Penn State wrestling, the premier program in the country. Talking about winners of like 9 of the last 11 national championships. However,
Insane.
this is the first time Penn State has won the Big Ten since 2019. Quite the
I
drought.
saw that. I
Quite the
saw that.
drought.
What's up with that?
With Penn State has here's one of the things that happens is when you're as good as Penn State, that you have a lot of guys who get buys in the first round of the conference tournament.
Okay.
I think they only had 3 guys wrestling in the first round of this tournament. So that's a whole match in which you don't pick up points. So other teams get to
Okay.
score points for a whole round where Penn
Okay.
State doesn't. So that can
Got it.
happen. And then this also a program that has a history of performing better in the NCAA tournament than in their own conference tournament. These guys
Got it.
turn it on for the NCAAs. It is what matters. You see guys who lost to like 2 years ago with Carter Staraki. This is a guy who lost to Michael Kemmerer in the Big Ten finals, and then 2 weeks later beats him in the NCAA finals. That is the kind of thing that Penn State wrestling does. They
I saw.
win.
I think it was Roman Bravo Young after he won in the Big Ten. Spoiler alert: Pat will give you the rundown,
Yes.
but he won. Someone asked him like, "How does it feel?" And I forget his exact words, but he was like, "Doesn't matter." Like,
Yeah, he
we're
was like,
going
it's
to the
just another
NCAAs.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. So like, they obviously it feels good to win. It's great for them, but I think it was even the video of Kale getting the trophy. He was like, cool.
Yeah,
Move on.
he
On to the
does not
next.
really care about Big Tens,
Yeah.
to be
Okay. So
honest.
on to NCAA's. Run us through what happened at the Big Tens, even though it's not
Yes,
the biggest of them all.
exactly. So Penn State, and this is by a wide margin the premier wrestling conference in the country. Like people who think SEC football is dominant, like nothing compares to what Big Ten wrestling is. It is, you have weight classes where 7 of the top 10 guys are all from the Big Ten. Like 1 through
Jeez.
8 are all Big Ten wrestlers.
So I know Penn State and Iowa are like 1 and 2. I remember that duel being huge. What
Yes.
are like a couple of the other big ones in the Big Ten?
Nebraska is a team that could come in like, third, fourth in the country, maybe. Other than that, you're not going to have a lot of teams pushing for team trophies at NCAA's top 4. Nebraska's going to be the only other team that pushes for one, probably. But Ohio
Got it.
State's
But
usually a
they
good
have a bunch of
program.
individuals.
Yeah, Ohio State's usually a good program. Michigan, I think took like second or third last year. And every program is going to have good guys. Like
Gotcha.
that's really what it comes down to. But Penn State wins the Big Ten tournament with 147 points. Behind them is Iowa at 134 and a half, Nebraska at 104 and a half. So, they not
Pretty
completely
good win.
walked away with it, but it was not particularly close either.
Yeah.
125, Gary Steen, guy who's just really not ready to be in this lineup yet, but was forced in with some injuries to Robbie Howard. Doesn't pick up any wins at the tournament. Tough season for him, but he's a guy who can hopefully, either take like a red shirt next. No, he might not be eligible for a red shirt, but not have to be the starter for this team next year. Pick up some experience, get better, be ready for this to be a contributor to this team down the line. 33, Roman Bravo Young, obviously rolls his way into the finals. It wrestles a pretty close match with Aaron Nickal out of Minnesota, who was surprised the tournament. Wins 5-2. Things got a little chippy at the end. I think Roman refused to shake his hand.
Oh.
But nothing too crazy for wrestling. And like Roman said, it's just another thing for him. Honestly, the only match he's, I think, really looking at is Dayton Fix in the finals again this year. He's going to be your number 1 seed at NCAAs. That's going to be the only match that's particularly close for him.
Okay.
141, Bo Bartlett takes 3rd place. I thought he should have been in the finals. I thought he wrestled a bit, had some mental mistakes in the semifinal match that he dropped. But 3rd place, you're not really going to complain about that. He was the 2 seed coming in, takes 3rd. Technically an underperformance, but Not a bad tournament at all from Bo Bartlett. You're probably looking at him having like a 4 to 5, and anywhere in the 3 to 5 seed at NCAAs.
Okay.
149, Shane Van Ness puts together so far a pretty good redshirt freshman campaign, takes 4th place. He lost to Max Mirren twice at this tournament, and for the 3rd time this season. That's going to be something, he's going to have to get over that hump most likely if he wants to be an All-American this year. 149 is a tough weight class. It's got a lot of good wrestlers, a lot of veteran wrestlers. He's going to have to beat someone who is seated higher than him, most likely to be an All-American.
Will they see each other again at NCAAs?
They might. Just depends on what side of the bracket they fall on.
Gotcha.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But it's been close every time.
Yeah.
Levi Haynes was, I would say, the surprise of the tournament for Penn State and surprise of the season for them. Wins a controversial final against Peyton Robb for Nebraska. Hands him his only loss of the season.
I saw that.
Yes. Peyton had what was
controversial about it?
Peyton took Levi down in the first period. It was not called. And then it got reviewed and upheld. But it was borderline. Like when I saw it, I went, that's a takedown, but they're not going to change the call because it's close.
Interesting. Yeah, I saw like it was an upset. This guy's undefeated. Levi Haynes is a freshman. Did not realize that though.
But yeah, dude, but Peyton Robb is a stud. I mean, he had a great takedown in overtime to win that match. Scrambled from a few positions, comes up with a body lock, and absolutely just buries Peyton Robb into the Resolite for the sudden victory overtime win.
Love to see it.
He's most likely going to be the 2 seed at NCAAs.
Wow.
Yeah, so that'll be big for him. I mean, he'll have some tight matches along the way, but I would expect, he'll probably catch Peyton Robb again in the semifinals. So that'll be a big match. We'll see. We'll see if it was a kind of a one-time thing, if that no call is the difference. But Levi Haynes looking really great for a true freshman.
As a freshman, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, and Penn State has an unbelievable record in NCAA finals matches. They do not lose, so that is important there. 165, Alex Facundo takes 7th place. Not a bad tournament hit for him, but not a great one. I think he came in as like the 5 or 6 seed. Dropped a match in the quarterfinals to Carson Harchla of Ohio State, who he beat in a bit of a controversial match in the regular season. Wrestled back for 7th. Facundo's a good wrestler, but he's a guy who needs to get to a little bit more offense, I would say. He wrestles a lot of tight matches, has a tendency to and this is always going to be the case against better guys in the sport, but he has a tendency to not get to enough offense when he's in those tight matches. 74, Carter Starocki, obviously rolls his way to the finals. Went up against an undefeated Mikey Labriola out of Nebraska in the finals, a guy who's very good. And Carter controlled that match, and it was not particularly close, won it 6-1.
Hell yeah.
I think he's going to pretty much waltz his way to the finals in NCAAs. He'll be the 1 seed. He is who he is.
I really like him, man. Like I said, I follow him on Twitter, and he's tweeting out a couple of times of just like that like heads down, I'm looking for revenge, I'm coming for you. Like not those exact words, like those kind of like cryptic tweets.
He's a beast.
But he fuck somebody up.
He is that guy. He is very confident in everything he does. He takes everything personally. That coming for revenge was a guy who beat him 2 years ago. The guy didn't do anything to him. He just won a wrestling match.
Yeah. Love that. Love that.
Yeah.
So another
that's who Carter is. He's one of those guys that's what makes him great. He's always got a chip on his shoulder. He expects to win every time he steps on the mat. And if he doesn't, he's going to take it very personally.
Love that.
Aaron Brooks absolutely rolled his way through this tournament. Wins by major decision in the finals. He's going to be an interesting situation at NCAAs where he might not be the 1 seed, because I think there's someone else who's undefeated on the season. We'll see. I mean, he's multiple time returning NCAA champion, so they might give him the 1 seed anyway. And his one loss was a little fluky, but I'd be shocked if Aaron Brooks does not win a national championship again this year.
Yeah.
197, Max Dean makes it to the finals and loses a decision to Silas Allred out of Nebraska.
No.
The score was pretty tight. It was 6-3, but the match was not all that close. Allred got 3 takedowns, and Max Dean's only points were 3 escapes.
Damn.
And it looked like Allred was, not quite able to take him down at will, but it was not particularly difficult for him. This is a matchup that you hope Max doesn't see in NCAAs.
Yeah.
You just got to hope that they fall on opposite sides of the bracket and don't meet up, because Max is an interesting wrestler where, I do think he's the best guy in that bracket. He won it last year for a reason, but there's just certain guys he doesn't match up well with sometimes.
Is it just like their styles, or?
Yeah, he tends to have trouble with taller, lankier guys.
Gotcha.
He took a loss to Ethan Laird this year, who's a tall guy. And he just, sometimes he takes losses. Like he's not the sort of dominant champion that some of the other Penn State guys are. He'll take 2 to 3 losses a year, but I would not count him out of the NCAA tournament. This is not, I don't see this result and go, oh, we're really worried here.
Right.
He had some close calls last year. He still won it.
Okay.
And then Greg Kirkfleet loses a overtime match to Mason Paris in the finals. They had a tight match in the dual meet. Paris is out of Michigan. Greg's probably going to be the 2 seeded NCAAs. Paris is his only loss on the year. Lost to him twice. I don't think any other major contenders are undefeated. And Greg got an important win over Tony Cassiope out of Iowa in the semifinals, beating him for the 2nd time this year, so he'll be sure to be seated above him. This is overwhelmingly likely what you're going to see in a rematch of the NCAA finals.
Okay.
It's a tough matchup for Greg. He beat Mason, I think, 3 times last year, but Mason was dealing with a serious shoulder injury that required surgery after the season. So
that'll change things.
Yeah, and it's an interesting history for them because Greg's first year at Penn State, Mason beat him badly twice, but Greg had some health issues that required surgery after the season. Then next year they kind of swap roles where Greg dominates him a little bit, but Mason's got health issues that they gotta sort out after the season. So
now they're both healthy?
Yeah, this is the first season where they're both healthy, and it looks like Mason's got the edge over Greg. I do think he's a bit of a smarter competitor than Greg. I think Greg's a better athlete, though. So, we'll see how that plays out in the finals. Like I said, Kale always has a plan. And every time you lose to a guy, it's very tough for any wrestler to beat a really elite guy 3 times in a row. It's very difficult. Every time they wrestle, the edge moves a little bit towards the guy who keeps losing, usually. Yeah. So, don't count Greg out by any means, but Mason will be, the Vegas odds will be on Mason for winning the NCAA tournament 2 weeks.
Gotcha.
But, great tournament for Penn State. They qualified 9 guys for NCAAs, which is exactly what you were looking for coming in. The only guy who, was the question mark was Gary Steen at 25. He was unlikely to qualify, and he didn't. It's a bummer, but it's what you saw coming. I would say pretty much everyone performed near enough to their seed that you're feeling fine about them going into the NCAAs. And that's really what's important,
Yeah.
Conference tournament,
definitely.
not everyone is going to win every match. And like I said, Penn State has the reputation of being better at the NCAAs than they are at the conference tournament. And that's what's important. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
But still, even with the Big Ten tournament not being like the prime focus or as exciting or whatever you want to call it, still get the team title, still get, was it 4 or 5 individual champions?
4.
4, right?
Bo,
Levi,
Carter, and Aaron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty damn good.
Yeah, and you're still looking at a team that could somewhat realistically have 6 national champions.
Insane.
Yeah.
Insane.
And
I saw Cale Sanderson won Big Ten Coach of the Year, Levi Haynes Big Ten Freshman of the Year.
yeah,
Pretty good.
yeah, I don't even look at who Coach of the Year is going to be because it's Cale Sanderson.
Yeah, obviously. I
He's
assumed
Coach
that
of the
was the case,
Year,
but
Coach of the Decade, Coach of the Century, Coach of this
yeah,
Millennium.
yeah,
Um,
of course.
he is the goat of
It's cool to
goats.
see.
Yeah,
It's cool to
of
see.
course. Um,
Nice. Okay, so a lot of
and
good things happening.
yeah, and what you're looking for coming into the NCAA, tournament. If Penn State could come out with 9 All-Americans, now that's very tough. That is a tall order. It's gonna be very tough for a guy like Alex Facundo, who's in a brutal weight class. Um, Shane Van Ness is far from a sure thing at 49, but he should not should, but like you give him like a 50-50 chance at an All-American, I'd say. Um, but yeah, I mean the goal for Penn State, I would say, like if everything goes right, Penn State gets 6 NCAA champions, 9 All-Americans. That is like the ceiling.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hold on there. Wait a minute. Yeah, I would say 6
I was
NCAA
just saying, are
champions.
we recalculating?
I was thinking about saying 7.
Okay.
Am
All
I
right.
am I saying 7? Hold on, 1.
Let's get it on record. What are you saying?
No, 6. It's 6.
All right. 6
6
champions,
with a
9
realistic shot.
All-Americans.
I mean, crazy
Okay.
things happen. You never know. But with a
Of course.
realistic shot, 6.
Okay.
But they should run away with the team title. It should
Yeah.
not be
Having that
particularly
many,
close.
yeah, having that many guys qualified and advancing deep into it, I'm sure.
The conference tournament will be a closer race than the NCAA tournament will be, because
Gotcha.
Iowa will not do nearly as well in the NCAAs as they did here, and they are the odds-on number 2 team.
Gotcha. Yeah. Nice. Well, shout out to Kel and the boys. It's an impressive performance.
Congratulations to your 2023 national champion Penn State Nittany Lions.
Put in the books. Today is March 6th. It is Monday, March 6th, 8:13 p.m. Pat is congratulating the Nittany Lions on the NCAA championships. When does it actually happen?
2 weeks from now. So it'll be two weekends from now. I think that's St. Patrick's Day. It should kick off on St. Patrick's Day.
Okay, so
might start on Thursday.
After that is over, we will tweet this clip. Congratulations, Pat. Predicted it.
Timestamp it.
Maybe not the boldest of predictions, but a prediction nonetheless. Oh man, I love it. Awesome. Love to hear that. I like being in tune with the wrestling world. I was tweeting through it yesterday, shouting out the guys. You make us all a little bit wiser in that aspect. So appreciate you.
Loved all the wrestling content on Twitter, by the way. Loved it.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying. I'm getting it going. More wrestling, more basketball. Trying to be, a full brand here.
Love it. And speaking of which, for any of our followers who follow me on Twitter, I did post a lovely joke about Micah Parsons on there from me doing stand up. Feel free to check it out.
You posted the stand up video?
Yeah, I did. It's weird. It didn't show up. If you go to my profile, it's not on like my tweets. It's only on like the media. I don't know why.
Did you start it tagging someone?
No.
Like, does this tweet start with someone's name?
I don't think it starts with Micah's name.
Because sometimes that'll go right into your replies because they just see the @ and it goes into your replies. Anyway,
either way, guys, check it out.
For everyone listening, Pat does stand-up comedy. Very good. I've seen him live. And I've been telling him he needs to post videos so we can see the material get viral, go on TikTok, go crazy. He's never posted anything. And now the one time you do, I didn't even fucking see it.
And it's Penn State related. It is about Micah Parsons and the wonderful interview he gave during Super Bowl week.
I do remember that interview. He said that foot fetish was great. And then the guy acted weird as if he didn't just ask him for a weird thing. So
that's this. You don't ruin my premise, please.
Oh God, sorry. maybe I'll cut this whole thing. I'm not sure. I will retweet that later. I can't wait to watch it. I'm very excited. All of that being said, follow Pat on Twitter at PatWithYou. Follow us on Twitter. More wrestling, more other stuff, football coming. But we got Bo Nickal, former Penn State legend, makes his UFC debut and just fucking dominates. You probably know a little bit more than I do, but as far as I understand it, Bo decided to start training for MMA like a year and a half ago, year ago, something like that.
After he didn't make the Olympic team.
Right. So who made the Olympics over him? Was it David Taylor?
David Taylor, yeah.
Yeah. So they said that in his entrance, which was incredible. He walks out and whoever's doing commentary says, "Coming from State College, Pennsylvania," and I just like already had chills. It's sick.
That was cool.
They start talking about that. I think it's Daniel Cormier talking about how he was Big Ten Athlete of the Year in 2018. I think it was overall the football players, basketball players, like really building up his credibility, which was great. And then mentioned that they said, if not for another guy in the room he trains in, he might be in the Olympics. I assumed it was David Taylor.
He would be. He'd be an Olympic silver medalist if it wasn't for David Taylor.
Which is incredible. But he says, you know what, I'm going to pivot. I'm going to start training for MMA. And he had a couple of matches in, I think it's the Contender Series. Is that right?
Yeah, he fought.
Are you familiar with the story? You can tell it if you know.
Yeah, so I mean, his first fight was against it was on I don't even know who the guy was, but he was like he was not a professional fighter, and Bo murdered him. Then he had a couple of fights in Dana White's Contender Series. First round knockout, first round submission. Dana gets him a contract. I think he got a low-level UFC fight that, again, he won in the first round extremely easily. Bo is probably like the most hyped prospect the UFC has seen in a long time. He's so hyped up that people are giving him hate, which you don't see a lot for UFC prospects, I don't think.
Yeah. And what I noticed too, they talked about is this is a John Bones Jones main card, who is that's one of the biggest stories.
His fourth fight, he's on the main card.
I was
surprised
his return. John Jones making his return. Bo is on the card, which is huge in and of itself. But at weigh-ins, at his walk-in, the crowd was getting up for him. This is his first UFC fight, and he's got notoriety. It's unreal. So I mentioned he's walking out. I don't know exactly what song he was walking out to, but they're talking about from State College, from Penn State, and as the guy's patting him down and getting him ready, Zombie Nation kicks in, and it was awesome. You can almost see. I assume this is what it's for. You can't quite tell in the video because it's the song comes on, and then a second later, he just starts getting into it, head bobbing and going. I'm like, oh, he's in the zone now. Let's go. And then gets in the ring and does what he does. He was a heavy favorite against Jamie Pickett, I think, of the guy. Because some people thought it said Jalen Pickett, which is funny.
He'd beat him too.
Yeah. Well, here nor there. But he was just to win the fight was minus 1,800, which for non-bettors, that means you have to bet $180 to win 10. That's a huge favorite. So a lot of people were betting on how he was going to win or what round he was going to win. I tweeted out, do we think this lasts to the second round? Because there's some betting value there. And everyone was like, no, first round submission. But sure enough, was it 2.5 minutes into the fight? Game over. Good night. Put to sleep. I mean, it was so much fun to watch.
Yeah, it was awesome. And like you said, just hearing fighting out of State College, Pennsylvania. It was
so
cool.
Fucking cool. Yeah, now let me ask you this. Does this I think let's start there. Where do you think his career goes from here, UFC wise?
He's gonna be a UFC champion.
Yeah, fair.
Yes.
Sean Clifford tweeted that out, so you and Sean, same page. Yeah, I agree. I think this is, he's got that, like you said, a little bit of hate on him, but also the support. He's kind of a little polarizing. He's gonna make for good TV, but he's also a damn good fighter. So he's gonna get another fight pretty soon on merit and also on ratings. It works both ways. It's a win-win for Dana to keep him in the spotlight. As long as he keeps doing what he's doing, he'll be there. So I'm very excited for that. My question was going to be, I'm sure there are some people we've seen, make the wrestling to MMA jump. Have you seen anyone have this kind of success this early on? Or do you think this might inspire others in the future to try to do the same?
So it's pretty rare for them to get not necessarily to have this success early on, but to have it be on a main card this early on. Ed Ruth made the transition.
Oh, really?
And he started his Bellator career 6-0, I think. And admittedly, I thought Ed Ruth was going to be a UFC champion soon too. But he took like maybe 2 or 3 losses in his career. I think he might have fought for a belt in Bellator. But there's been plenty of wrestlers who have made this transition done very well. Daniel Cormier was a wrestler.
Yep.
Ben Askren, Olympic wrestler.
Oh yeah, I remember him.
Henry Cejudo, Olympic gold medalist. There was a point a couple of years ago when, like, I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't know how many weight classes there are in UFC, but like, say it's 8, like 6 of the 8 belts were held by wrestlers.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so I would say it's a little unusual to see this like immediate publicity for them, because also they tend to not be the most exciting fighters because they're not strikers.
Right.
But I think Bo is probably going to get a fight fairly soon that is against someone very good.
Yeah.
Because of the hype he has, because of the success he's having, but also because he's not taking any damage in this fight. So he can fight like 3, 4 more times this year if this keeps happening.
Yeah.
If you don't get hit, you can fight in 2 months.
Right. Yeah.
So
he's got a little crazy. He's got a little crazy in him too. Like you see him post around that ring, like.
And the other thing is
fun. And like, because that's what you're saying. Like a lot of wrestlers maybe aren't flashy or strikers or fighters. Like you can see him in the zone. Like he's supposed to hit people. Like it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, and he's he's no like Conor McGregor, but he's a good talker. He's good in front of the camera, and he's got swagger. And
that's what I'm saying, man.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, he's willing to strike too. Like, he opened up that fight trying to throw a massive kick that he whipped so hard on he fell over.
Whipped very hard. But hey, scared money don't make money. So
yeah, but I think he's got a good balance of he's willing to stand there and throw down a little bit and be exciting, but that he knows ultimately, not many guys are going to stop him from getting a takedown.
Right. Well, that'll be fun to follow. Exciting to see who his next fight is. Like you said, it'll probably be a bigger name, a closer odds matchup where, maybe it won't be over in 2 minutes. Maybe it will. We'll see. But that's going to do it for us. March 6th. A lot going on in the Penn State world. Definitely a longer episode, but if you're still listening, thank you. We appreciate it. We'll be back probably in the next couple of weeks with some more off-season content. So stay tuned. Good luck to the basketball team. Hopefully in the big dance. Good luck to the wrestling team and NCAAs. Good luck to everyone in life. I hope you're doing great. I wish you the best. Thank you for listening. We out.